All right, New Mexico, the land of enchantment. You know what a wonderful time we've had browsing through the mountains, the canyons. That canyon that Geronimo, many times escaping the cavalry, rode up. You have seen part of the drawings there. I want to introduce part of the crew. I'm just going to let them introduce themselves, the crew that went up, helped us get this. And we are so thankful for them, and I want them to introduce themselves so you'll know them too. I'm going to start right over here.
I'm Scott Shillingstad from TRC, New Mexico.
And
I'm Otis Short from TRC, New Mexico.
And
Doug Brown, TRC, New Mexico.
And you all know Ruthie Day from the Shepherd's Chapel. And here we've got, he's taken back.
Clark Huss from To the Consequences.
Old bull rider. An old bull rider is right. You're looking at some old cowboys and what have you here from the hills. They've been a big help to us. All right, what an interesting place, New Mexico. All the things that have happened here. I want to introduce you to Scott Shillingstad, who is one that has spent much time, and he loves the country, he loves the history, and those things that many people don't seem to care about. That's what impresses me about Scott. I just want to let him share with you one particular artifact and let him explain to you the different people that have been through this part of the country and give you a little insight into it. Scott, God bless you. It's good to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Arnold. And there are a lot of interesting things in New Mexico, and I've run across quite a few of them. There's been people coming into New Mexico since right after the Ice Ages. As many of you know, the earliest known arrowhead, Clovis Point, was named after Clovis, New Mexico, where it was found. And we've had basket weavers here. We've had all the way up to the Mimbres Indians, who were a tribe of people who came into this country about 1,000 years ago, lived here about 100 years, and disappeared, leaving all the relics behind. We've had the Apache live in here. We've had the Spanish conquistadors coming through here. The Cibolos back here in front of us are behind the camera are one of the places where the Spanish conquistadors looked for the 7 cities of gold. I have an artifact here that was brought in by the Spanish. It was found in an old Indian cave. I believe, my belief is that an Apache warrior on a vision quest left it behind for medicine. It's either a pike or a lance. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. It's all hand forged out of crude iron that the Spanish used back then, and we're pretty positive it was a Spanish artifact. We have behind us, over in this direction, behind the hills here, we have the Jornada del Muerte, which translated means the journey of death. And there were as many as 11 million people, Spanish and Indian alike, who traveled through this trail and left many of their artifacts behind, including armor and just everything that they used in their everyday living. I've traveled through the Gila forest back here. There's remnants of the people back there. There's even a lot of their foodstuffs, such as the beans and grapes, and some of the things that they left behind are still growing out in front of some of the caves that they lived in around here. Many of my friends have found a lot of the artifacts left behind by the Spanish. And we believe that people came through here even long before the Spanish did, and that's what we're going to try to document in the next few days here.
All right, that's great. May I see it a minute, Scott?
You bet.
I'm going to hold it up with the profile to the camera. You'll note that there's a place for a long shaft here, and I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of the Spanish on a horse with this riding the battle axe, the lance, or a pike. And Scott found this, not on the surface, but he's a hunter for truth and facts of artifacts and the documentation that they bring. And we think we're going to be able to add the fact, we don't think, we know, that the Numidians were here also. all the way back to the time of the Mayan. Think about that, won't you? How fantastic the hills, the rocks, the stones, the things that people leave behind that give us those clues of the years that have gone by. Yes, the rocks do talk, the mountains speak when we listen. Scott, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Arnold.
Sharing this.
All right, here we are back at Grab It. Beloved, we've put together a documentary that it's going to be a series of documentaries. The subject matter, the finds and hieroglyphics, artifacts, heritage are endless in the research that we have done so far, and we haven't even scratched the surface. And I thought maybe at first I might just tell you what basically that we're working on, and that is the fact that finally at last Numidian Hebrew has been found in America. I'm talking about North America. It has been found in Central America, or at least Yucatan. Numidian Hebrew is a language or an alphabet used by Hebrews and that is diverse from Phalo, or what some of you would call ancient Hebrew. And the other place that it was found was at Comalcalco, which is to say in Yucatan, and there are about 1,800 tablets. Dr. Barry Fell will be releasing more information even in this coming June in relationship to this. We're going to give you a nice follow-up on this. But what are we saying? And so that you get the picture. In Yucatan, this alphabet was found by early Christians as early as 100 to say 150 AD. And being Christians, they traded with and among the Mayans. And you're going to find that this group, along with Mayans, we will, I feel, document that to a degree, were later in New Mexico. For now that we have found Numidian Hebrew in New Mexico, as well as at Comalcalco, there were Mayans that practiced the burial of the pots, I will call it. In New Mexico, they are called kill pots. Kill pots, inasmuch as they were used in a burial as part of the artifacts, not artifacts at the time, of course, but equipment used in the burying of a person. Between the language and the peoples, we will see that at least some of the Mayans possibly came to this great valley in New Mexico. It's an awesome undertaking, and I am sure that in the near future we'll be going to Comalcalco and in the Yucatan area to further look at the hundreds and hundreds of clay tablets that have been found there. But so that you would understand, our drive is to open your mind to the fact, yes, there were people in the Yucatan among the Mayans who totally disappeared supposedly, and yet we find another clue as to where at least some of them might have gone, or at least where some of them traveled during their great heyday. So with that, we're going to go in, and I think first I'm going to show you the pots that were used at Comalcalco in the burial of the Mayans, where also Numidian Hebrew was common in some of these plates. I'll be sharing some of that with you, and then we'll be going back to New Mexico to document this. At the time of this recording, the University of New Mexico is not even aware that they have Numidian Hebrew, or I doubt the pots with the burial, very unusual burial practice of kill pots. Okay. We'll get right into that. Let me share this picture with you. Okay, the very unique burial of the pot burial, the clay pot burial, I feel, where did it originate? Well, I'll talk something about that even biblically here in a moment. But this is the typical burial at Comalcalco. You will note that we have crushed oyster shells here, which were readily available from the Yucatan. But this is the pot itself. Note, with air hole, no, a kill hole, which is the term used in New Mexico, that the body was placed here in the fetal position on this bed of oyster shells, which from the ocean comes life, right, as is taught and believed by many people, but the clay pot being that it encompasses. Now, as I told you, these were Christians, and it should not take a great deal of difficulty for you to know and understand the relationship of the words of our Father, "Ye are the clay, and I am the potter." And when you pass on into that new body, then the clay pot that symbolizes the broken body or death or the word kill, it's a little hard for perhaps those of the English language to understand why it would be called a kill pot in New Mexico. But understand, the body is broken, even as the crushed oyster shells are broken. But inasmuch as they were Christians, they had the clay pot. He was the potter. And in this act of death or this type of burial of meeting him, we have a very unique thing that is set up. Therefore, you will better understand when you see Lee than in New Mexico, explaining to you the Mayan kill pots and the little hole broken. Was it so that the spirit could escape also? Well, I think so in part, but at the same time, the broken body and the resurrection, the clay pot that the master could reform, remold into a new spiritual body. Strange? Well, it happens. And it happened in large quantity. In other words, this type of burial, as unusual as it was, is a common practice in New Mexico, in this particular area of that particular time, and also at Comalcalco, where the Numidian Hebrew tablets. The reason I'm doing this, I want to show you the uniqueness that the Mayans, in fact, some of them, as well as Numidian Hebrew knowledge concerning that language, that alphabet, as well as those that spoke it, which means naturally they came from the area of the Middle East and settled in this area, no doubt trading for gold among the Mayans for one thing, but within this we see that one and for all times, yes, Mayans, some of them along with Hebrews, traveled to this area carrying this custom. Customs do not pass away overnight. In fact, they're still practiced in some places. All right, here we are at Geronimo Springs. I think one of the foremost museums as far as our heritage in this great nation. It's a must, and when you're through TFC, be sure and stop in. There are artifacts, there are paintings, drawings, probably the largest collection of this certain kind of pottery anywhere in our nation. A pottery that will end up, you'll see, being a second witness even to the fact that there were Mayans, or at least their culture, present in this valley. And I have strong suspicions if their culture, then certainly they that were teachers, meaning Mayans, that Mayan influence. It gives me great pleasure at this time to present to you Lee Forrester, a young man we've met here who has a vision in this area in helping research further the heritage of not this year, not the year before, but back into the ancients. What happened here? And how can we improve upon that has been when we see yet tomorrow over the horizon? This vision I think you're going to hear a great deal more of. And enough said. Lee Forrester. Lee, it's a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you, Arnold. From about the time of 600 AD until approximately 1150 AD, there was a prehistoric Indian that lived in this area, 100 miles to the south to just north of us, and 50 miles in this direction to the Rio Grande, which is behind me, and Truth or Consequences is situated right on the Rio Grande River. These Mimbres Indians built what were called pit houses, which were round structures that were submerged approximately 3 feet in the ground. And then along about 800 AD, just as the Mayan civilization at its high point was collapsing, they radically altered their architecture and their pottery or ceramics making, and they went from a plain bowl with the ceramic making into a black and white type of pottery, which has become the most highly prized prehistoric Indian pottery in the world. And this area was the center of this pottery making. There are some of us that believe very strongly that the Mayans were the incoming influence. As well as changing their pottery, the structure of their architecture changed from rounded structures to a rectangular structure. And here in this book, I have a diagram of a classic Mimbres kiva. All of the architectural work on the Mimbres have been done in a valley just about 50 miles to the west of here, between here and Silver City, and in one valley called Mimbres Valley. No architectural work has been done on classic Mimbres in this area. One small dig was done last summer by the university, but most of it lies dormant. Here you see the rectangular structure. This is a kiva, or communal structure, where they had their religious type activities. And here you see these are two large stones which are 18 inches long, and they're described as smooth green stones. A sipapu here is a white pit full of sand, and then the fire hearth. And I'm going to read a description on the next page of what they found inside this classic Mimbres kiva. The green stones were set to the north and south of the sipapu in such a manner that they pointed directly at it. Both were set in the floor so that 3/4 of their bulk was above the ground itself. Their shape was quadrilateral but not rectangular, and both were highly polished with a slightly undulating surface. No artifacts were associated with the north greenstone. However, beneath the south greenstone was a military macaw. A string of 67 turquoise and 11 stone beads had been wrapped around its skull and wing, while a 1.4 millimeter long string of shell beads and 170 double lobed beads and 2 turquoise beads had been wrapped around both legs. This is clearly an indication of the influence of the Mayans. For a ritualistic society to radically alter the way it made its pottery and their architectural structures, I think this is strongly suggestive of the Mayan influence. Also, in addition to that, we have some other pictures which I would like to show. The classic Mimbres, which existed for only about 150 years, from around 900 AD to 1150 AD, did these what were called picture bowls. And I'll show you some examples of these. Here is an example of a classic Mimbres picture bowl. And on here we see a brave on this side of the bowl with 2 tropical birds that look like parrots standing on the rim of a basket. And they're clearly parrots. And there are a number of picture bowls like this. This is from the Galaz ruin again. On this page is a photo of a picture bowl with a brave with a parrot standing on top of his head. You can see it clearly depicted here. He's on top of the brave's head. The Mimbres Indians seem to be very much in harmony with their surroundings, and that's, I believe, one of the reasons why their pottery has become so popular with collectors and has made it, like I said, the most valuable prehistoric Indian pottery in the world. One of the problems here in New Mexico where we are is that it's a very economically depressed area, and some of these bowls sell for as much as $30,000. Now recently we've had burial laws which have been enacted, and these pots are burial pots. In fact, well, let me show you around some of the ones in the museum, but first here's an example of a burial pot. When they put a hole in the middle of the pot, that was called a kill hole, and then they put the pot over the top of the deceased's head, and this was so that the soul could go out of the crown. And then they buried the deceased person underneath the floor of their pit house. or dwelling wherever they happened to be living. So they were very highly prized pots, even with these people there. And we have a number of examples here in the museum. In fact, we have probably the largest display of Mimbres pottery on display in the world of any other museum.
Good.
Let me show you some examples of classic Mimbres picture bowls that we have here in the museum. Here is the turtle. And you can see the kill hole in the bottom of this one. Now this was used as a burial pot. Turtles are the third most popular image, and this is one thing that we're trying to trace, is what significance the turtles were. They used birds and fish were the number one subjects that they painted. And here's an example of a thunderbird here. And here's a thunderbird over here. And this is another turtle. And each one of these were placed over the heads of the deceased. Here's a small picture bowl of a sun, of a whirling sun. And this one has a kill hole in the bottom, which denotes that it was probably a burial bowl for a child. It's a shame that many of these were exhumed by amateur archaeologists with a bulldozer. And so basically, archaeologically, we know very, very little about these people other than the artwork here, because there hasn't been any good archaeology done by archaeologists, but rather pot hunters looking for pots that are worth a lot of money. Over in this other case here is an example of the early boldface pottery when I believe the Mayan influence first showed up. And this is really an interesting drawing which has a lot of Mayan qualities and characteristics to it. What I'm hoping is that we can get a long-term archaeological dig going in the area where we can take our time with structures which have remained undisturbed in this particular area, Truth or Consequences, and do long-term digging with archaeologists and bring groups in and out. And then we can extract perhaps that direct Mayan influence here, as I believe it traveled up the Rio Grande, which was a direct route up to the north. Here we have a classic Mimbres picture bowl of 4 crosses. You can see them here on each side. It's a beautiful little bowl. Here's a picture bowl of flags.
Good.
Here's a classic Mimbres picture bowl of a hummingbird. And one of the things that we never talked about was the pictograph of the monkey that is up near where the jaguar and the boat are. But a lot of the locals, that's one of their favorite pictographs, is that monkey. It's a beauty. Here are some typical pictographs which are in the mountains called the Black Range Mountains to the west of Truth or Consequences. And up here in the top you see what a lot of the local people who have gone up and looked at this call a jaguar here. And there's some sort of deer on this part here. And then down here you'll see a boat that's almost like a Viking boat. See the rectangular sail here and the headpiece on it, and then the patterns on it itself. Native Americans, prehistorics especially, never used any sort of sail device. And this is in the mountains about 40 to 50 miles from any body of water at all. It's quite fascinating. Here is another picture of the jaguar, a close-up of it. You can see the jaguar there with the spots. There's no animal in this area that resembles this one. And now we have another photograph, and this is a close-up of that boat where you can see the rectangular sail and the mast, and it almost looks like some sort of animal head piece here, and it's a Viking or Middle Eastern type, low type of vessel. And these are on the rocks up there near some large classic Mimbres ruins that are in that area. Here is a pictograph of a boat which we just recently found in another mountain to the south of Truth or Consequences. And this is almost a top view. You can see a large boat that looks like it's compartmentalized. It's got different compartments here. And way off on the end here you see a rudder which of course they never had on any of their sorts of crafts. So it was very curious. This was along with a lot of other very distinct pictographs in the same area. In the future, here in Truth or Consequences, we're planning on having setting up a field school of archaeology down here, where archaeologists and even amateur people who would like to come and help us find out a little bit more about the past of the Mimbres Indians in this particular area can come. We have a resort that we're building on the river, and a ruin, or a 10-acre property, that we're going to do a long-term, say 10-year lease on, to allow people to come in and dig the property and find out what we can find there from that ruin. We have a hot bath. This mineral area, even to the Apaches, was the healing ground. It was called Ojo Caliente de las Palomas, which means the hot water of the doves. And it was a healing area where even the Apaches laid down their arms, and it was a resting place for travelers back through the ages. And we'd like to have it become a resting and learning place again.
Lee, you were mentioning the monkey. Was it a local animal here?
No, not hardly. Monkeys were of course, tropical animals, and the feeling of folks who have seen these things is that there was some person who came from the south. It was like in that classic Mimbres Kiva, that military macaw skeleton was underneath the rock that was placed in the direction of the south, so that it was some sort of southern influence, and it was right around, like I say, the time of the collapse of the Mayans, or the classic Mayans, and so we feel that it was probably the Mayans who brought this influence into the area.
Very interesting. Okay, Lee, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being with you, and we're going to be talking with you some more. There you have it. God bless you again. Geronimo Spring. Why is it called that? Well, you might ask someone. This was his area, and what a fantastic area. I would highly recommend that if you're ever through this way, and, you know, I would consider, if you enjoy getting a little dirty for protecting heritage, you might keep in contact with Geronimo Spring and kind of help along some future plans there of this young family that wants to preserve our heritage. So there it is. God bless you, America. You were there. All right, bless your hearts. Here we have a close-up of one of the inscriptions on one of the tablets from Yucatan. Here we have in Numidian Hebrew, YSWHNMN, which is to say Yeshua, or Yeshua, the protector. This was found on a tablet with a drawing in, yes, Yucatan, Comalcalco, there, and not in Arizona, but this is an alphabet that is used in its Medan, and has been in use for many, many years, though it is probably one of the least used Hebrew alphabets known to the Americas, inasmuch as what we're about to show you is only the first find of Numidian Hebrew in the United States of America, in the state of New Mexico. Let's just switch to that, if we may, to show you. Here above the Rio Grande, you can recognize the Numidian. Note the bar at the top and one at the bottom. You should be able to recognize from the other picture the letter Y and S, which is Jesus. And of course, this being on one of the higher stones, not in Yucatan, not in the Middle East, but in New Mexico, in the Great America. And this stone is only about 120, and I'm guessing now just off the top of my head, south of the place where we found Phalo Hebrew, the entire Ten Commandments on a stone near Albuquerque, or the Los Lunas Ten Commandments. Isn't it fascinating, though? That language used in Los Lunas was Phalo-Hebrew. Here, Numidian Hebrew, the only place found. And this will be made aware to we will make the University of New Mexico aware of this, because these stones are actually in danger, severe danger at this time of being destroyed, because the people do not realize what they are. So, in New Mexico, yes, right here in good old US of A, somewhere soon after, say 90 AD, there were travelers up the Rio Grande River, and this message, plus hundreds, I will say hundreds of others, left on the stones in this great state, this great nation. Do the rocks speak? I would say read it for yourself. There would be some that would like to disagree. Well, be that as it may. But we will produce documented proof concerning the specific burial rituals and customs that were used in both places, that there is a direct tie that these visitors made a trip across the Gulf of Mexico, traveled up the Rio Grande River, and actually visited this place. Again, this is a clip from Barry Feld's own work, Yahshua is My Protector. I'm going to slip up here, if I may, a larger clip that will show you, and we'll have to zoom out a little bit and come in here, if we may, on the entire tablet. This is the portion that we were just looking at. And here it has this protector form beside it. There are approximately 1,800 or more of these clay tablets with the Numidian Hebrew on some and other markings on others, where the burial customs of the clay pots took place. This is part of the establishment as the ruins are being excavated, that are being worked on, where these clay tablets were found. We hope to be able to take you there sometime in the not too distant future. Now I'm going to slip that one down, and I'm going to pull up, if I may, and I'm going to go a little higher on this and put it in place, Ruthie. All right, where it's more stable. Here we have Comalcalco. This is to Veracruz, and to Mérida. This is the Yucatan, right in the very lowest, if you would, southernmost part of the Gulf of Mexico. Here we had these huge tablets being drawn out, taken from this. The Mayans, a culture for that particular time, quite modern, very, very modern for that time. The Mayans, that people that totally disappeared. And we learn from this that the Mayans had visitors as well. No doubt, Christian, speaking the tongue of and using the alphabet of Numidian Hebrew, trading, no doubt, for gold, inasmuch as it is thought that in that great Rio Grande Valley that there is much gold in that area. Well, here and there, so it has come to pass, and so it has been proven that there was. But that quest of man, as he travels the globe, as God scatters his children, as these Christians that were at Comalcalco, that visited the Mayans here, and no doubt the Mayan culture intermingling with this, but I still feel the ritual, the clay pot, from passing from life to death of the flesh, allowing the clay to be reformed by the Maker into eternal life. How precious our Father's Word as we study deeper, as we search deeper. It is this location that certainly we hope to take you to in the not too distant future, to actually survey and understand the recovery that is taking place here. And we hope we'll be able to bring a great deal more on this subject to you from Dr. Barry Fell. Okay, beloved, there's one thing about Comalcalco. There's no timber there. And these buildings and walls were made from cement, mud, clay primarily, that was first sun-baked and then fired in a kiln. Each of these tablets have writing upon them. In these walls of the entire city, there could be hundreds, thousands, yes, even 1 million of them. There has been much contention as to were these, was it a school? I think as Dr. Barry Feld suggested, where different languages were taught, and as much as so many languages were present here at Comalcalco. Or was it a mark, as Dr. Feld might ask in his book, which I would recommend that you all have, Aesop, number 17, that each family had to make so many bricks? Well, that we don't know, but as we progress, and in the next documentary go much deeper into the translation, here you have them, a picture at least in part of the thousands, up on top of thousands of clay brick made by hand, sun-baked and then fired in a kiln. That there they stand, even to this day, being explored at this time in Comalcalco. This calendar is one of the tablets, or from one of the tablets. You see the scale above, which is upside down to us, but that's fine, because I want you to note in particular, I'm going to call them V's, our little mounds here. This is a calendar, and each one of these is a month. This happens to be the weeks, and then we have Phalo Hebrew, not Numidian, but Phalo Hebrew below this. Now, so that you get a better idea, I'm going to switch to a drawing, and this comes from the same area. Here are your months by name, your weeks, and then of course the symbols. Now, this is in Yucatan, the Yucatan Peninsula, that is, near Comalcalco, and actually this stone coming from Comalcalco. And now, let me show you a picture, if I may. A picture that our crew took. I want you to notice the V's here. I want you to notice these being the months, and this being the weeks. We have here, and I know this is very difficult to pick up. Unfortunately, we ran out of colored film. But you can distinctly make out the V's, and this calendar tells us it is the 8th month. Now the black, because this is black and white, these months, I'm going to have, oh, that's nice. You can see that it continues on. And here are your weeks. This calendar indicates the 8th month, that whoever passed through this particular pass, it was in the 8th month. Was this found in Comalcalco? No. Near Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, right here in the good old US of A. Again, proof that the same people from Comalcalco were here in our great nation. How much proof does it take for some people? Well, for some people it takes quite a bit. So there we have facts. Well, to me they are. They're absolute proof. When we look at these markings and drawings, pictographs, it is obvious that they are ancient. What we call ancient, that is going back to 100 AD. We know for one fact that something happened to the Mayan people. There is a disagreement as to what date this took place, but we know they were there present at 100 AD. We know by the writings in Numidian Hebrew that the Hebrews that were there were Christian, and that they traveled from the lower, very lower part, southernmost part of the Gulf of Mexico, as it goes into Yucatan. We know that the language was used there. We know that the calendar was used there. And the experts have only scratched the surface in translating these tablets. You're going to hear a great deal more about this. But what is one of the greater finds? In New Mexico. Yes, that great state of New Mexico in these Americas, that these people travel to that area. Do you know what this opens, beloved, is a new avenue, inasmuch as the culture is present also of the kill pots, or the clay pot being used in a burial, as a burial instrument, that certainly the Christian can understand also these clay pots that we are, and a Christian can readily, or other religions as well, now that I think about it, that he is the potter and we are the clay. And that at that great transition from life of the flesh to death and eternal life in the spirit, with the opening or the broken spot being symbolic of both the broken body but also the escape of that spiritual body, the maker, the potter, still molding and forming. And beloved, I hope you understand that as these new truths come to light, I think it's ironic that Truth or Consequences New Mexico, though it was named from a radio program, that truth or consequences also is a very religious term. You can accept these truths and grow as the potter molds us into new knowledge, or you can suffer the consequences of being in a rut that with the technology that we have in this age, and believe what the history books say, that Columbus discovered America. I mean, I know that some people usually think on that level. So very near that great city, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, you can either accept the truth or suffer the consequences. How precious those people have been in that area, the Truth or Consequence area, to assist us in both locating, providing transportation, and most of all, sharing their genuine warmth and hospitality in bringing this to all of you, the people of the world, in knowing that our boundaries and our borders of knowledge, the tent pegs, must be extended to allow in new thought, new truths, when they have been documented to this degree. How faithful our Father is that He allows you as a part of this family to be a part of that expansion. We have only started, and this will only be the first in a series of these great discoveries that are found on the great Rio Grande, that river which was a highway to ancient travelers. Yes? And along that great Rio Grande as it winds, providing life with its water to both man and animal down through the centuries, then may we continue to travel it and finding those stones on which they have written. For as we look at these stones one after another, can I interpret them for you at this time? No, but we're working on it, and they all have a meaning. They were left there to be understood. They are signs of truth, and let us expand within those truths. They speak. Yes, that's what languages and alphabets are for, to convey a message. Does your mind receive? Beloved, they speak, we hear, and there you are, the Rio Grande, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and beloved, you are there.
Well, I'm sitting here with Arnold and his cohorts here, and we're just been discussing what we want to do in the future on this project. And I think I'd like to help out in any way I can. I've got some leads on where we can follow up on Hebrew drawings and pictures that we have here in New Mexico. It's my belief, after talking to Arnold and several other people from the area around here, that we have the Numidian Hebrew and several other cultures blending here, and I'm going to try to start up in Chaco Canyon and talk to local folks. Most of the folks around here are real friendly. You can go into almost any ranch house and they'd be glad to sit down and talk to you with you and tell you where these different sites are, and And as long as the person isn't going in to destroy the sites, most people will welcome in and find the sites. My idea is that if I can put together a package where people can come in and look at the different pictures of the different petroglyphs and different writings around here that are in the rocks here, that I'll be able to tell them exactly where to go and a little bit of the history on the pictures as the information comes back from Arnold on just what the pictures do mean. I think it's a real necessity that we bring this to light. I'm real upset because a lot of these things are being destroyed here in New Mexico through willful acts of different landowners and different leaseholders. They're locking up the gates in certain places, trying to prevent people from getting into public lands. And if there's anyone out there that's willing to go along and work with the different branches of government who are also interested in trying to open up these sites, it'd definitely be appreciated. We're kind of in a delicate situation here with the landowners. They've taken and bought up small pieces of patented property that block off huge tracts of public land here in New Mexico, and also in other parts of the United States. It's not just a local thing.
All right, I just want to share with you some of the drawings, some of the writings that are in the area. Here, of course, you have one of the most ancient. These markings, or we'll call them pictographs, whatever you choose. This happens to be part of the Numidian alphabet with Yah or Yeshua as their part. We're still working on it. As you will note, this is very dim to pick up on video because of coloration, so forth. But what a precious sign, what a precious find. I really feel that possibly this will be one of the greater finds of this century in helping enable us to understand the migrations of the Mayans as well as Christians from like 100 AD. Our Father has certainly had his hands on his people. I hope to do another documentary in this area showing you that we go all the way from the world that was by some of the better dinosaur and even elephant finds in the U.S. in this valley. But that's another time for another subject, to show you how rich this particular area is, not only in this world age, but dating even back into the world age that was. What a precious place, and how precious it is. Another marker found on an area, a border marker as to how far markings will be found on particular ridges. That one that is familiar with this sort of thing knows and understands where the boundaries of the signs or the directions or the map is displayed. You stones speak, all beloved. In this area there are more finds of those things left, of the migrations long before Columbus. In the alphabets of the sacred scriptures even, you find them as the travelers, the world travelers. And you might say, well, why would they want to travel? It's very scriptural, and some would disagree with me in this, but God said, I will scatter, and beloved, certainly he has. Now again, this is a marking that is a Spanish marker that tells where other markings are found, and for the benefit of those that helped us, I will not reveal the message of this. I'm proud that I was able to help them decipher it and interpret it, and to be able to help them on further finds. How precious the people of this great valley are. The Rio Grande, the highway, I'm even going to call it the expressway for the centuries, with the life-giving water in this barren land. The barren land that would support life with the water there, and they leaving their markings to follow. Here's a fascinating drawing. You notice the angelic being. There are 1, 2, 3, about 4 men within this, but you will note that the stair leading up to the we'll call it a three-bladed prop. Were it to be Indian, there would be 4 to the 4 directions. This no doubt was by someone that knew something concerning angelic beings, possibly that even visited this earth. Notice the hands of the one man upraised in prayer to that he did. Then notice the tree alphabet over his head. How fascinating as we see these markings in the stone. Oh, beloved, we will continue working in this valley, deciphering and translating and bringing these meanings. We also, just to the immediate left of your picture was one or two, I believe it was two Numidian letters. Does this mean a form of transportation, a higher level, a vehicle? The three-bladed, not a prop as you would think of it, but leading to that, the Great Spirit, His Son, and the Ruach. In many ways, many people worship all three offices regardless of their culture. How fascinating. The little man on the chair, you will note, has an angelic glow. I hope you enjoy this one. It's fascinating. All right, beloved, here definitely we have an Indian marking, but it is not. It is a painted marking. There's a red type paint that is used, and it tells a story. I was happy to be able to interpret this. It tells a story, and there's one of the members, Hank, that you see there, that works in this area, a rancher. But at the bottom of this, up past this symbol of worship, these are what are called turkey tracks. They're used to express a direction. You will notice that some go up, and I'm not going to say a great deal about this because there's a deeper message, and for those that are there, I will maintain that. But there were, you notice above the turkey track that goes in two directions, that was the turning around point. Notice the turkey track above that is disfigured, meaning it is to throw off someone, but there were approximately 38 pack animals. The pack animal is the mule in the extreme. Notice the two ears and the head. There to your left as you look at the screen now, but there were about 32 or 38, I forget the number, that traveled these pack animals to take something from a place and bring it back to another place. And I choose not to go any more into the translation of this, but this is extremely high quality. And beloved, you are in the valley in which Geronimo escaped from the U.S. cavalry for many years. Also, that great chief Victoria. This is the drawing instigated by a chief. I have no doubt. The quality of it is fantastic. And naturally, we do not give the location of these beautiful markings because some people would go there and desecrate them, not understanding or knowing. But how beautiful the days gone by and the various people from this valley and the very line itself that they leave of travel, leaving the message for those that would follow in later years, some to wonder in awe. But notice the sun at the bottom below the place of worship. That means to the east, and they went to the west. How fantastic. I really enjoy doing this sort of thing. I hope and trust that you enjoy the fact that we bring it to you, sharing with you, some of you that would never have an opportunity to go into these great trails that you can almost see Geronimo and his tribe racing away and the cavalry behind them, never conquering him, but finally coming to a place where he himself surrendered for, I feel, the sake of his people. This valley so loaded with history that if you listen real close, it seems that the stones do more than talk, that you can actually hear the sounds from past history. How fascinating. Oh, beloved, this I hope you enjoyed as much as we did. It's always a pleasure, and I think we enjoy a great deal more bringing and securing the information and putting these together than perhaps you enjoy watching them. But it is always a pleasure, and these little moments where we just pull up for a moment while we're waiting or pausing for a moment, the discussion, the perhaps what ifs, sometimes make a very interesting discussion within themselves. And we thank our Father for His earth, this earth that He has given us lease to in our short lives here, that we can enjoy, that we can participate in the very heritage itself by leaving a heritage. And I think if you ever spend your time searching our heritage, bringing it forth, and documenting it or putting it, if you would, say, set it in cement, if it be a video film or the artifact itself. I was sitting here in this museum a few moments ago as we were discussing that this is not a museum that had millions of dollars to go out and buy these expensive pots and artifacts. No, they were brought in by the wonderful people of this great valley and area. People that care. People that care about past human beings that lived and served our Father, whether they called him the Great Father or whatever name, that it is still one Father. And the natives here in this area donating all these precious artifacts so that you could enjoy them. And certainly I would say, if you're ever through TFC, you want to make sure that you make a check mark, a big check mark, by Geronimo Spring. I think you'll enjoy it. Time well spent.